Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and this is your weekly forecast for the week of July 29th through August the 4th. I got some things to get to this week that are pretty interesting. A little bit of a summary for the week. We have a square happening from the Sun to Uranus on Monday. We're going to talk a little bit about Uranus and read a little bit from a book called Cosmos and Psyche to kind of get uncover some of the depths of the Uranian archetype. We've got a new moon happening in Leo. That's on the 31st on Wednesday. And then our good friend Mercury is going to be stationing direct on the same day in the evening. That's going to be fun. And then Venus is going to be making her own square to Uranus on the 2nd of August. So that's a little bit of an overview. What we like to do in these videos is talk about the major aspects of the week, talk a little bit about potentially a tarot card associated with one of the decans of the zodiac, and then a little bit of a moon cycle report where we see the aspects that the moon is making throughout the course of the week. One of the things I've been starting to do in the videos lately is give you a little bit of an essential dignities report. And if you aren't familiar with essential dignities, it's basically some kind of powers, I guess, that the planets have, or their condition. It's talking about what kind of condition they're in, and there are a number of different types of dignities, and that is sign-based. Okay, so accidental dignity is being house-based and aspect-based, and the essential dignity is what sign is that planet residing in. And we have things like domicile, which is when a planet is in its own sign that it hosts or rules. Or stewards, if you want to be a little bit more egalitarian about it. And then we have the concept of triplicity, which is we've been describing as the wind at the back of this. Like if we talked about ship metaphors, we would say that we have the wind in the sails. So communal support, the winds of fate are helping to move significations forward when we have a planet in its own triplicity. And then we have things like exile, detriment, which are the same thing, exile and detriment, which is when a planet is in a domicile kind of opposite with the planet that is generally considered opposite of that planet. And it's kind of on the outside looking in. The last dignity that we have is a condition called being in the fall, which is where associated with the Wheel of Fortune, and that planet may be kind of at the bottom of the wheel, and the only place to go from the bottom of the wheel is up, and it may be difficult for that planet to express its signification when it's in its fall or in its exile. Those are two different things, but those are considered to be debilities. So we'll talk about that as well. So a couple things. I'm going to share my chart here with you. Hope that you're enjoying Leo season. There's a little bit of a shift of our energetic type of experience for sure. So we're starting out with our dignities here. We are experiencing, first of all, the Sun in Leo is in its own domicile, so it is its own its own temple, which gives it a lot of strength. It has access to its own resources. We're able to shine that Leo light very brightly. We're able to kind of get in touch with our sense of purpose and our sense of authority. Our ability to issue commands has been further supported by the Sun in Leo. It also helps us to get in touch with the sense of purpose. It was said to be the light of the mind and illumination. So we may be getting a little bit clearer on some of the things that we want to do to move forward as we're moving out of that Cancer, Capricorn set of oppositions we were experiencing over the summer. And we're kind of, that energy is starting to lighten up. And now we're able to kind of move forward and say, well, maybe this is our sense of purpose. We've also got this stack up happening with Venus and Mars here accompanying Leo, or the Sun in the sign of Leo. So the Sun is strong. It's the end of summer. It's shining brightly, very high up in the sky, and it is very vital. There's lots of life-giving energy. It's a very fiery type of experience that we're going through now. The sun also has triplicity by the day. So right now, the sun, if I'm going to draw my little thing here, is in its own domicile, okay? And it's also its own triplicity ruler. So that's like a doubling up of very nice dignities. So the sun is very dignified right now. The sun has access to all its own resources in its home temple, and it has that communal support and the support of the winds of fortune, so to speak. So there's a lot of momentum in the Leo ruled area of your chart. So one of the things that you can do this week is take a look at the Leo house, and in this chart it would be the first house, or Leo rising. But let's say you have Leo in the fifth house. Potentially, you have a lot of energy behind things related to your children, or things related to your personal creativity, or places of entertainment. If you had it in the ninth house, potentially you would have a lot of wind in the sails with finding meaning and purpose in your life. Or potentially you're doing some long distance travel that helps you get in touch with why you're doing what you're doing out in the world. Okay, so we're doing things in the 10th house, and this ninth house is related to that 10th house with this angular triad here. That's a concept we haven't really talked about that much. Okay, I'm just drawing all over this thing. But basically there is each angle of the house, or each angle of the chart, 1, 7, 10, and 4, are very powerful areas of the chart. They were called kentrons, or like energy centers. They're like energy vortices. And they were said to be much more focused on the native themselves in your chart. And they're powerful. A planet in the angle has more power, according to the traditional astrologers. And then we have these houses that are flanking them. So for example, with the 10th house, which represents action out in the world, we've got the succeedent house, which is the 11th, that is moving into the 10th house by primary motion. And then the 9th house that is falling away from the angle by primary motion. And what I mean by primary motion is the diurnal rotation of the Earth, the daily rotation that happens where planets rise, culminate, and set over the horizon in a 24-hour span. And then that is some of the reasoning that we have for some of the significations that we have of the houses. It's kind of this push and pull of a yin and a yang type of energy with the daily rotation of the Earth, and then the planets moving counterclockwise in zodiacal motion this way. Okay, so there's this kind of equilibrium that's trying to be taken into account. And when we have planets in a cadent house like this ninth house here, we are moving away from whatever the type of energy was in that particular angle. And in this case, it's achievement out in the world, it's public visibility, it's the actions that we're taking through potentially our career or our sense of purpose. And when we go into the ninth house, we are really trying to get in touch with why we're doing that. We may even take a journey to leave our successes behind. So that's a very roundabout way of saying that if you have Leo in the ninth house, that type of energy might be very highlighted for you in this week or the next few weeks with the sun in Leo. Okay, let's move forward with our essential dignities report. Tangent City here. So that's the sun. We, of course, have Jupiter still in its home domicile sign of Sagittarius, still retrograde in motion. It also has a triplicity support, but at night. Okay, so the triplicity rulers are based on the elements. So the sun is the daytime triplicity ruler of the fire signs. Okay, fire. And Jupiter is the nocturnal or nighttime ruler. So the theory goes is that Jupiter will gain strength and gain support in a night chart when the sun goes below the horizon. So play around with that and see if there are Jupiterian types of things that you might want to be pursuing in your life, and they might work out better in the evening because of the ability of Jupiter to have access not only to its own resources, being in its own house or its own temple or its own domicile, but also having support in the evening. We are also seeing the other planet that has dignity this week besides the moon, and we'll talk about that a little bit too. Saturn is still in its own home sign. So we see here Saturn is in its home sign of Capricorn. And this is a really powerful moment. The planets all there, we have 3 planets, 4 if you count the moon at the beginning of this week, that are all in their own temples. So this is a pretty active week that we're starting out with. And the planets are in, most of them are in pretty good shape. And there may be competing energy between the 2 of them. Not all of these planets have the same agenda, but they are all almost equally powerful with respects to dignity. Now, both Jupiter and Saturn are retrograde, which does happen for a good portion of every year. So they may not be as able to bring about significations that they represent. Jupiter being the greater benefic, bringing, bridging gaps, being associated with justice and with judgment. Jupiter was the judge. Mercury was the lawyer in the cosmic courtroom. Saturn being associated with boundaries, with entropy, with time, with building and removing structures, both of those things. So we may start to see that moving forward as both of those planets start to move direct in the coming weeks. Jupiter is going to be going direct on August the 11th. And then Saturn, I believe, is going direct on September 18th. Don't hold me to that, but I think that's the date, sometime in the middle of September. So that's the dignity report. We've got a lot of really powerful planets in the sky. Of course, Mercury is still retrograde for a short period of time, but it's kind of starting to loop back around. It's going this way, clockwise, but it's going to be going, it's going to be slowing down and starting to come back the other direction. Okay, so we've got some really interesting things to talk about with that this week as well. So I'm going to clear that. All right, so let's start out with Monday. Monday, July 29th, very early in the morning, we have the moon making a sextile to Uranus with the moon in Cancer. Actually, check that. We have that's PM, sorry, I apologize. What happens earlier in the morning at about 7:30 or so is the moon is going to be moving into its own domicile of Cancer. So you can see here that the moon is gaining dignity when she moves into her own comfy abode. So she is able to enact more lunar significations when she is in her own home sign. She becomes more nurturing. We are able to manifest more familial type of environmental support. We are able to, our relationships with the public can be improved. The moon was also associated with relating to the public. It was associated with the realm of fortune and with things coming into being and passing out of being. So there is some growth-orientated structures when the moon is in Cancer. It's a very fertile time for the moon. So there's a fertility that's happening in the beginning of the week here, and the moon gains dignity by being in its own domicile. And we are also going to see at the end of the week, when the moon moves into an earth sign, into Virgo, it's going to gain triplicity at night. Now, that doesn't necessarily happen until it moves into the earth sign, but something to keep watch on the horizon. So we are in a balsamic moon phase in the beginning of the week. And the balsamic moon phase is when we have the moon 45 to 0 degrees behind the sun. So here we see this relationship right here where it is the end of a moon cycle. So this is about, I don't know, roughly 36 degrees right now, if at the beginning of Cancer. And it's going to be moving into the conjunction with the sun at the new moon. Okay. So this is the end of our moon cycle. So the moon, even though she has a lot of dignity in Cancer, she is waning and she's becoming the crone moon. So we have that kind of threefold goddess type of phase where we had the new moon, which was the young goddess, the maiden, so to speak. At the full moon, we had the mother, and then at the waning moon cycle here, we have kind of the crone phase, which is about wisdom. So one of the things to keep in mind is this beginning of this week before the new moon, there's going to be a consolidation of the wisdom that we've learned in the last moon cycle, which I believe began at that solar eclipse on July 2nd. We're going to be seeing kind of the results of the work that we put in and the lessons that may have been activated or triggered, and kind of consolidating all of that knowledge into the seed to be reborn at the new moon on Wednesday. So the beginning of the week is about letting go. It's about figuring out what kind of reflecting upon what kind of lessons that you've learned from all these very difficult oppositions between Cancer and Capricorn. And the moon is going to be triggering all these things again throughout the beginning of the week. So it's kind of like the test, right? It's like, what did you learn? Because remember, this moon is a triggering aspect. So it moves so quickly that we're going to see it kind of moving into an opposition eventually with Saturn, and then moving into an opposition with Pluto. It's going to meet up with Mercury retrograde. So it's going to be triggering all of those planets, which are going to bring up some of the issues that we've been dealing with for the last month or so. So, clear the decks, cross all the T's and dot all the I's when it comes to that, reconciliation that you made between your private life and your public life, when it came to how you are going to nurture yourself and others throughout the next 6 months or so. Whatever new projects you've begun, especially in the domestic sphere, it's a really powerful time for beginning things in the domestic sphere. We're sort of letting go of things in the more Capricorn area of life, because of the presence of the South Node, which is where the tide is going out, and the presence of Saturn and Pluto, which is kind of churning up some of the old karma to be dealt with and to be released and transformed. So that's something that is going to get another hit at the beginning of the week here. So we see a little sextile with Uranus happening, okay? And this is triggering. So here we go. As we move forward, you can see that the moon is going to be going into a sextile with Uranus. And I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about Uranus a little bit, because we have, not only is the moon making a sextile to Uranus, we have this challenging square between the sun and Uranus. So we have the sextile, of course, is of the nature of Venus. So it's a harmonizing influence. So we're getting some harmony coming from the moon to Uranus, but we have this very challenging aspect happening as well, which is the square from the sun to Uranus and Taurus. So there's the square. And that, of course, is of the nature of Mars, which is a friction, which is, kind of a warrior energy, kind of a separating energy. So the moon is trying to be the intermediary between all of this and trying to make peace, whereas our kind of solar impulses are creating some of the tension and the friction. So what is the difference? So solar impulses, especially with the sun in Leo, it could be the manifestations of how we assert our authority. It could be the way that we are issuing commands. It could be our pride. Okay, one of the downfalls of the Sun in Leo and Leo in general is getting a little bit too full of ourselves, and you know, kind of that look where you look around and you get haughty and you're like, who do you think you're speaking to, type of thing. I had my own experience with that in a business meeting where I may have come on a little bit too strong and was trying to express something, but I think I may have, you know, expressed a little bit too passionately or a little bit too arrogantly, and I had to backtrack a little bit and maybe humble myself a little bit. And this is not uncommon with Leo ascendants with Sun in the 12th house. Sometimes we can project that solar energy in a way that could be a little bit of our own self-undoing. And then we have to learn from that and try to do better the next time. So be careful with that type of assertion at the beginning of this week, because it's going to be running headlong into this Uranian energy here. So let's talk about Uranus. Let's talk about Uranus. Let's talk about, that doesn't quite work, but all right. So I'm going to read to you a little passage from Cosmos and Psyche, which of course is the book by Richard Tarnas. It's a very good book about the outer planets. It's got a modern psychological perspective from it to it, but it's one of the best books about kind of trying to find meaning through historical examples of the planets Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, especially. We have a lot of information on what the visible planets mean through traditional astrology, but of course those planets weren't used in the Hellenistic system. So finding information out about these modern planets is a little bit more challenging. And this is probably the best source that I've come across, and other astrologers as well. So I'm going to read to you a little bit about the Promethean qualities of Uranus. We think about one of the ways that we find meanings in the outer planets is what was happening when they were discovered. The charts that were, the discovery chart of that planet, some of the world events that were happening around the world at that time, and then going back and doing some research about giant epochal changes that happened when that planet was either changing signs into a new sign or a new house or things like that. And we can see that in our own charts too. We're seeing the Taurus area of our chart being really radically being asked for change. So I'm going to read this to you. It says, remarkably, however, all of the archetypal qualities associated with the new planet do not fit another figure in Greek mythology with extraordinary precision. Oh, do fit, sorry. Remarkably, they do fit another figure in Greek mythology with extraordinary precision. Prometheus, the Titan who rebelled against the gods, helped Zeus overthrow tyrannical Kronos, then tricked the new sovereign authority Zeus and stole fire from the heavens to liberate humanity from the gods' power. Prometheus was considered the wisest of his race and taught humankind all the arts and sciences. In a later tradition, Prometheus was the creator of humankind and thus held a special relationship to humanity's fate from the beginning. Every major theme and quality that astrologers associate with the planet Uranus seem to be reflected in the myth of Prometheus with striking poetic exactitude: the initiation of radical change, the passion for freedom, the defiance of authority, the act of cosmic rebellion against a universal structure to free humanity of bondage, the urge to transcend limitation, the creative impulse, the intellectual brilliance and genius, and the element of excitement and risk. So also Prometheus' style in outwitting the gods when he used subtle stratagems and unexpected timing to upset the established order. He too was regarded as the trickster in the cosmic scheme. All right. Interesting stuff. So Prometheus, interesting because Prometheus was one of the people who helped to overthrow Zeus, who was Jupiter, and overthrow the tyrannical Kronos, who is Saturn. So this is kind of a clue into some of the Saturn ruled things that we've been dealing with lately, because we've been dealing with all these old power structures, and the old guard has become empowered with Saturn being in its own domicile, and we're seeing some of the people in power gaining power rather than losing it, and a kind of a double down on some of the old guard, so to speak. And one of the keys really to this liberation is going to be, I think, and Richard Tarnas thinks, through this Uranian liberator, Promethean, fire-giving liberation type of experience. So what do we need, and what sign is it in, and what resources is it working with? Well, in the sign of Taurus, it is a Venus-ruled sign. So who is going to be leading the charge of change? Well, Venus is historically associated with women. So this may be a radical shift that is going to be initiated by women, through the feminine archetype, through our ability to harmonize, through our ability to create beauty, our ability to reimagine the resources that we're going to be dealing with in life and with our planet. We're seeing a lot of shifts happening with the planet that we're going to have to pay attention to. We're seeing some very powerful women who are very much representing a new order, a new sense of diversity and change that are becoming very prominent in our national American conversation. And that's becoming very important. And they are leading the charge to some of the changes that potentially need to take place within the country. And what we're seeing is a double down with the folks that want to preserve the old order, okay? And this is a lot of where our conflict is coming in right now. We've got people who had power. We've got, some of the old corporate interests that want to retain that power. We've got a majority who had political and social power that wants to retain it, and possibly maybe being a little bit afraid of losing that power to a new generation of women, of minorities, and things of that nature. And that's creating a lot of fear consciousness. And I think the thing that I'm trying to tell people and share with people, and the messaging that I think that hopefully will help us get through this period of time, is just because you empower somebody else does not necessarily mean that you have to be disempowered. And I think that would be my plea to the powers that be. If whatever side of the fence that you're coming down on, it's okay to share. It's okay to empower other folks. It doesn't mean that you are going to be forgotten. It doesn't mean that you are going to be usurped or anything like that. It's about sharing. It's about empowering the people who haven't had a voice. And I think that's going to be a real theme that we're seeing moving forward in this country. Those are really the big challenges and conflicts of the day. That doesn't mean we have to get rid of every single structure. This is the other thing that people get afraid of. People are really afraid of change. And when Uranus is in Taurus, Taurus tends to be, it's a fixed sign. And fixed signs are the middle of a season. There is a constancy within the weather in that season. And initiating change with fixed signs is sometimes fraught with a little bit of peril. The fixed signs aren't necessarily super enthusiastic about changing, because one of their main energetic goals is stability. So we may have a lot of resistance to some of these things that need to come up. Another clue that we may see to this Uranus energy. And remember last week I talked about, and I'll show you the card again. The first decan of Leo is associated with the Five of Wands, which is kind of a competitive card. Okay, so we have this we see these youthful figures competing with one another for the spotlight and for attention and for power and authority. And it's sort of a mock battle. It's a little bit of a drama type of thing that's being played out. And we are seeing this five energy, this conflict, being contrasted with the Five of Pentacles, which is where Uranus is right now, is the first decan of Taurus. And we see in this card two figures that are sort of falling on hard times. They are destitute, they are injured, and they are either going away from a source of security, which is represented by the church or the stained glass window, or they're going towards it. One of the two. It's not exactly clear which direction they are heading. And this card speaks to resources, the fear of lack, potentially down folks that are down and out. And we can see this sort of as we are trying to create a change with the people that do not have the access to what they need. And we are seeing the income gap becoming wider and wider and wider. We're seeing more inequality, and especially when it comes to the resources and land and property and things like that. And that may be some of the things that are ripe for a revolution and ripe for a Promethean shift. Something to consider. And the cool thing is that with Prometheus and Uranus at the helm, we may be able to become pretty innovative about how that is enacted. I think there's two choices with Uranus. I think that we can choose to be progressive. We can choose to embrace the change that is suggested by Uranus, or we can resist it, and the change is going to happen anyway, but it might be a little bit more difficult, might be a little bit more violent, it might be a little bit more bloody, which is sad. I've often thought this with astrology in general, and just with time in general, is a lot of the things that we experience, a lot of the pain that we experience as human beings, is when the need for change becomes aware of, or we become aware of the need for change. And do we go with it, or do we resist it? And really, I say this very often in my videos, we can't always avoid the pain. Change can be painful, but I think that we can reduce the suffering by letting go of the oars and going with the flow of change rather than resisting it. And I really see that as the moment in history that we're at right now. Is, are we going to awaken? Prometheus was the great awakener to the need for some sort of shift in how we deal with our natural resources, how we deal with our distribution of resources, how we deal with the folks that maybe have less, and how we deal with the folks that have more, quite frankly. And whatever side of the political or wealth spectrum you fall on, there's a call for a change. And how are we going to live into that? Interesting questions. Okay. Yeah, I mean, here's an example of this in the news. We have a presidential candidate, Elizabeth Warren, who is speaking about a student loan debt forgiveness plan that she was thinking about rolling out within the next year. That's one of the platforms that I think she's running her campaign on, which is really would be an attempt of a redistribution of wealth. So I think that is something that is associated with this card here, with the Five of Pentacles. Okay. The Five of Pentacles also was called The Plow by Austin Coppock in his book 36 Faces. So really, to expand on that and to use some of his wisdom as well, what types of new plans are we initiating? What types of new earth-based technologies are we bringing into the world? We are seeing a need, if we are being realistic about this and not ignoring it. We're seeing a vast need to reevaluate how we use our energy. The planet's warming up. We're running out of some of the natural resources. We're facing potentially mass extinctions of different species. How are we going to respond as a human society, as a human species? And really not just for the health of the planet. I think this is where we get really mistaken. It's not just about, is the planet going to survive? Oh, global warming, we're going to save the planet. Nope. Planet's going to be here. The planet is its own organism. And the question is, are we going to survive? And are we going to take the measures necessary as a species to be able to live in harmony with the planet, rather than becoming, well, a virus that it needs to purge, that it's making it sick or giving it a fever? Isn't that interesting? Some of our choices, and this, it's a combination of things. I think it's a combination of our actions and a combination of, the period just in history. There are definitely shifts in the Earth's environment over time, but I think if you're really paying attention, you're seeing that this has become accelerated in the last, few years, few decades, to an alarming rate. And the question is, do we want to survive as a species or not? And eventually that voice is going to get so loud, hopefully, that we start paying attention to it and start plowing the field for the change that needs to happen moving forward. Okay, that's Uranus. I mean, this is Uranus energy. This is where we really have to get innovative so that we can survive as a species on this planet. This is our home. We got to take care of it. We got to be a good steward of it. And those are some of the questions that are going to be coming up. Now, on Monday, now that we've kind of gotten clearer about what Uranus means and where it's placed in the sky right now and who the change agents might be, we see a square happening between Uranus and the sun, right? So there may be some conflicts that come up with how we are asserting authority and that need for change within resources. This may manifest in the news. I'm sure that it will, where something unexpected may come up. There may be a conflict between authority figures and the people that are trying to initiate these new earth changes. It may be pretty disruptive. Uranus was the disruptor. I like to think of Uranus as a lightning bolt of awareness that is crumbling the old structure. I think the key really is to just go through the changes with awareness, stop resisting, figure out where this is happening for you personally too, because as above, so below. In the macrocosm, so the microcosm. So even, because we're experiencing this in a very global perspective, we're also going to be experiencing this in our life too. So look at the area of your chart that's ruled by Leo, okay? And then look at the area of your chart that is hosted with Taurus, that is hosted by Venus and Taurus there. And see where that shift needs to happen and what part of your life it needs to happen in. For example, I have Leo on the first house, right there, and I have Taurus in the 10th. So personally, what I'll be experiencing and all my Leo rising friends will be experiencing is some kind of, potentially some kind of disruptive conflict between the way that I may assert my personal authority of first house and the way that you know, Uranus is bringing some sort of potentially unexpected disruptive event through my relationship to the public or my career or things of that nature. So take a look at that. Recognize that Uranus is a long-term change, and that Uranian area of your chart, that Taurus area of your chart, is going through a 7-year cycle of shifts and changes. And just pay attention to that area of your chart this week. Pay attention to what is asking to be changed. The benefit of the Sun Uranus connection is that sometimes as stubborn human beings, we only go through the changes when we feel friction. And when we have the square, I like to call that the rubber meeting the road. That's the tread of the tire and the friction that happens that moves us and propels us to actually take action and move forward. So pay attention to what your life is telling you needs to happen and where you need to move forward. If the tire is too slick, if there's no tread on it, if there's nothing that is gripping the road, we're going to just keep spinning our wheels and we may not go anywhere. So that's Monday. That's the Sun squaring Uranus. That is my Uranian mini soapbox. Sorry. I don't know. I'm taking the archetypes. I'm seeing how it relates to the world and observing, and hopefully trying to reflect reality as I see it, as filtered through my consciousness and through my opinions. Okay, that is, you're never going to be able to completely escape that as a diviner or an astrologer or somebody who is reporting these symbols. There is going to be some subjective viewpoints that come through there, and you may have a slightly different perspective, and that's okay. We have space for all of those perspectives, but I'm going to give one side of the story and try to be as objective as possible by reading those symbols and trying to make connections as I see it through the events that I'm experiencing both in my personal life and that we're experiencing as a collective. And you may have a completely different experience, but we have to allow ourselves some space to agree to disagree on some of these things too. I think that's actually a really good thing for the week is instead of getting this super charged, fixed in your position energy where you create a conflict, because look at what's going on here. Mars is still co-present with the Sun. Venus is too, helping to try to soften the conversation. But, we're willing to fight for our position. And Mars is also squared by whole sign aspect with Uranus as well. So it's okay to say, hey, let's take a time out. Let's agree to disagree. We're not going to, solve thousands of years of conflict, disagreement. We're not going to solve hundreds of years of abuse of each other and of the planet in one conversation. And we may have to live into those answers together and find compromises. So that may be a theme for the beginning of the week as well, as we feel this Sun-Uranus square. Okay, let's move forward. The other thing that's happening for most of the week, and this is important too, is that Mercury is going to be making a connection, retrograde Mercury, a connection with Pluto in Capricorn. So you see that Mercury is continuing to move backwards, counterclockwise in the zodiac. On my chart here, retrograde planets are in red. And it is moving into a connection with Pluto. And remember a connection, which I believe we call Sunafe, in contrast to Kalesis, which is an adherence when the planet is making a conjunction. Sunafe is when a planet is aspecting another within 3 degrees. That is called a connection. And we are seeing that is an intensification of that aspect. So we're going to be revisiting that Mercury-Pluto opposition that we experienced a little while ago when Mercury was in Cancer last, before it ingressed into Leo. And we may have to review some of those things that came up and, go over and redo some of them. Look at the Mercury ruled area of your chart. That's going to be the Gemini and Virgo houses. And recognize that those two areas of your chart may require a renegotiation and a confrontation with maybe some of the darker sides of yourself, of the structures that are ruling your life, the Capricorn type structures. And there's still maybe some healing and some transforming that needs to happen in those three areas of your life. Ask for help if you need it. Be willing to slow down and let go of the oars. That's a great piece of advice for retrograde planets. One of the things to think about when you have a retrograde planet, and this is speaking again to the primary and secondary motion that we were experiencing, we have primary motion was said to be of the nature of the sun and of the nature of the divine and of the nature of the one and of unity. And the secondary motion was said to be of the nature of the moon and the realm of fortune, where forms are passing into being and out of being. So the will of the planet, when it goes retrograde, is submitting to the divine plan. It is relinquishing its own will and being swept down the river to maybe potentially getting a divine course correction. So be grateful for those mercurial delays. Be grateful for the Jupiterian reevaluation of the Sagittarian area of your chart. Give thanks to Saturn retrograding in your chart, which is helping you to come to an awareness of some of the Capricorn type structural areas of your life that maybe still need to be let go of. Express gratitude for those things. Recognize that there is a higher power than you that is giving you divine assistance in that area of your life. That's a great gift. That's going to be something to really keep in mind when you come across the very challenging things, because generally as human beings, we like stuff. We like our bodies. We like our food. We like our houses. We like our toys. We like our security. And especially in America, we love those things. It's okay to like those things. It's not okay to be attached to them to the point where they cause you suffering. And there may be a question of how attached are we getting to those material things? And do we need to have a connection more with the spiritual parts of ourselves? And that spectrum is going to be different for all of us. There are some of us that need resources to do things in the world, and there's others of us that need far less. It's never going to be equal. We're not asking for like a complete, everybody has the same thing. You know, we've tried that in other countries, and it works sometimes, and then there's other ways that can get corrupted too, as we've seen in, you know, some other types of governments. But the point I'm trying to make is that when a planet goes retrograde, that is an opportunity for you to let go and let God, okay? Or let go and let universe, let go and let cosmos, whatever it is that however you feel your relationship is to a higher power. So Monday, we're still seeing that connection happening, and throughout the week. As we move into Tuesday, we are going to see, let's see if I can move my chart. We're still in the balsamic moon phase. The moon is still in Cancer. This is Tuesday, July 30th. And we are going to see all of those challenging aspects starting to come into play that I was speaking about, with the moon making an opposition to Saturn and then making an opposition to Pluto. Tuesday, to me, is an interesting day. There are a couple things I want to talk about with Tuesday. First of all, the moon is making 4 connections in that, or perfections that day. It is opposing Saturn at about 10 o'clock a.m. It is trining Neptune in Pisces at 18 degrees at about 2 o'clock p.m., 2:15 p.m. Eastern Time. It's opposing retrograded Pluto in the evening around 7:30, and then it's making a conjunction with retrograde Mercury at 11:30 p.m. Another condition that's happening on that day is the moon is said to be coming under the bond. We've talked about this in previous videos, where the moon is within 15 degrees of the sun, and that happens at about 22 degrees of the Cancer moon. And that's said to be a weakening of the moon, where it is under the beams of the sun. It is the significations of the moon are happening in secret. The moon becomes weaker, and until it escapes the bond at 15 degrees on the other side of the sun. Remember, it's kind of like that. The moon is kind of having its Kazemi moment when it's coming into the furnace to be reborn into the new cycle. So Tuesday, to me, is a day that may be dealing with some of the past issues that we've been dealing with for the last month. It's the test. It's the are you passing the test? Did you do the work? Were you able to be like water and pool around the obstacle? Were you able to have patience instead of running headlong into the brick wall? Because this is the final exam. Maybe not the final exam, but it's one of the final exams of our summer season, I think, where the moon is passing through this gauntlet of Pluto, the South Node, and Saturn. What needs to be let go of? What really needs to be let go of now? What have you already let go of and allowed yourself space for the new cycle to be born? You know, one of the things that they talk about with if you want to clear the energy in your house, get rid of some stuff. You want to have new things come into your life. If you practice feng shui, if you want a new reset of the energy, you have to let go first. Nature abhors a vacuum, so it will fill that empty space. But it's difficult to fill that space if there's clutter. So get out your Marie Kondo book, get out your magic of the magic of tidying up book, and figure out what you love, what does not spark joy, and what needs to go. And be courageous enough. Use that wonderful Leo sun, courage in that area of your chart to be able to let go. And to be able to say, you know what? To have faith that what you let go of is not serving you anymore, and that there will be something that will take its place. It may not look exactly like the old thing, but it may be more in alignment with who you are now. That old thing, that old energy may not be a reflection of the growth of your soul. And the new thing that wants to come in needs that space to grow. So that's something to consider on Tuesday. As we move forward into Wednesday, let's take a look here. You can see that Moon is making that sextile with Neptune, and then goes through the oppositions. Okay, it's going to be connecting with the North Node. So something new wants to come into being. The North Node is a place of the tide coming in, according to Judith Hill. But it's also a place of desire, because it's the disembodied head of the dragon. It is Rahu that wants immortality. It wanted the elixir of life, but it was not allowed to have that. And it was the deity severed the head. So be aware of your desire nature on Tuesday. As the moon, you may have an emotional attachment and desire for something that ultimately may not be in your best interest too, because you're getting these oppositions from Saturn. There may be another no. And I'm learning to love the no. I think that in life we want yeses, and we love the power of a yes. But there's beauty in the no. And I think that coming to terms with the no's in your life is a really powerful experience too. It can be really healing. It can be really liberating. Okay. So use the creative no for liberation. So as we move forward, we're seeing there is our sextile with 18 degrees Pisces, Neptune. And then we're moving into the opposition with Pluto at 21 degrees. Okay. And then at the end of the day, the conjunction with retrograde Mercury. So that's our Tuesday. The moon is powerful during this day. Okay. It is in its own domicile, it has its own resources. Now, a little bit of confusion that I've had with the moon being in its own domicile is, does that give it protection? Is it in its chariot? That was a term that I learned about in Demetra George's book and Chris Brennan's work and Ben Dyke's work. The three of them are like a powerhouse trio of traditional astrology knowledge. Is that sometimes a planet is protected when it's in its own domicile from the beams of the sun. Now, that may work for the moon in Cancer, but as the moon moves into its conjunction with the sun, we may lose that. We may lose that protection. Okay, so as we move into Wednesday, we're going to have a new moon at about 8 degrees of Leo. Okay, you can see that it's going to be the sun's going to be moving into 8 degrees, and we have a couple aspects that day too. The first thing that we're looking at, I'll do it in order. We're going to start to see a connection between Venus in Leo and Uranus in Taurus. So this is a connection of the square aspect. So the beginning of the week, remember the connection, the square is the nature of Mars, and the connection energy is within 3 degrees. And that's an intensification of that energy. Aspects don't just happen right when they are become exact. We have a lead up, we have a build up, we have a build up of the tension that happens with these planets. And starting on Wednesday, we're going to start to see a connection between Venus and Uranus. Now, interesting thing, Venus is the host of Uranus right now. So that's called reception. So right now, Uranus is going to be coming into a square aspect with its host. So it's like Uranus is staying in Venus's temple, but maybe Uranus is trying to change too many things in the house, and Venus starts to get a little bit upset and says, "Hey, wait a minute. I don't like change. I'm ruling a fixed sign here. There may be some conflicts that come up with the Venusian ruled area of your chart, which is Taurus and Libra, where that area of your life is going through change. We just went through, and started to figure out the Leo area of your chart that may be coming up against the very real need for an innovative solution. And now Venus takes her turn, coming square up with the Promethean illumination of a need for restructuring that area of your life. So, for example, in this chart, this is a Leo rising chart, we have the 10th house connected with the 3rd house. So the career, the actions out in public, potentially needing a shift with the way that we communicate, with the 3rd house significations of our local community, with our siblings, brothers and sisters, with people that we share a common bond with. That's the 4th house. Remember, this is the cadent house that is connected to the 4th house of our roots. So this is moving away from our roots. Okay, this is like, it's still connected to our roots, but it's like the extension of our family, our extended family. These are siblings, these are neighbors, these are, short journeys and messages that happen throughout a community. So, for example, if you had a Leo rising chart, like I do, or like this chart is here, you're going to have those two areas of your chart that may need to come into some sort of awareness with a need to create change. Okay, so that's something that's going to be perfecting on Friday. I think Friday the 2nd. So we're going to have a little bit of a tension in those areas of your chart, those Venus ruled areas of your chart. for the next couple days. So just be aware of that. And like I said, be thankful for the friction and move through it with grace if you can. Let go of the oars. If you recognize a need for change, be willing to make it. That's a theme this week. Change is a theme. But maybe difficulty with change. Maybe a little bit like, I don't want it. I don't want the change. And I mean, we're all experiencing this. Like I'm going through some changes too with my career and my living situation and stuff like that. When there's been a few uncomfortable truths that have come up with some of that, and I'm having to kind of live into the answers. And I had spent a little bit of a sleepless night with some new information that I got regarding my home, and it's nothing super serious, but I think that the mistake I made at that moment was I allowed myself to think about too many of the possibilities, and it kept me up at night. And what I have to realize, and what we all have to realize, is we can live into these changes. We definitely have to make the change, but we don't have to have it all figured out all at once, okay? And that's one of the things that I would really keep in mind as we're experiencing the aspects of this particular week, is you don't have to have it all figured out all at once. You have, hopefully you have a support system that you can reach out to. And with the fixed signs, it's not going to happen quickly anyway. It's going to take time. We're making these changes for the long haul. These are shifts in real identity shifts that are happening, and real ways of, there's a conflict this week between our personal identities, the Leo area of our chart, something that we really like have a subjective identification perspective with, and the way that we deal with our resources, our Taurian ruled resources, the tangible earthy materia of our life. And those two things, those are the conflicts of the week, I think, the big conflicts, beyond the resolution and the tying up the loose ends with the Cancer Capricorn oppositions that we've been seeing. Okay, so that's the connection that's happening, that's beginning on Wednesday. We also are experiencing on this day, we're going to, at about 4:51 p.m., let's start moving. We see that the moon is starting to move into Leo around the beginning of the day, around 9:15 or so a.m. Eastern time, okay? And that's going to create this arrangement here called a stellium. Now, this is a true stellium. This is a stellium. This is 3 or more planets in the same sign. Some authors say, I think, 4 or more. But these are 4 traditional visible planets in the same sign. And so that's legit. I mean, sometimes we can, some people don't include the outer planets in stellium. Some people say that instead of 3 planets, it has to be 4. This is a legit stacking of that Leo energy, and all of it is coming into conflict with Uranus, okay? Reinforcing that theme of change. Now, what do we have as our resources of support? Well, all of those planets have a nice trine to retrograde Jupiter. That's nice. That means that our ability to kind of maybe take the long view, our ability to have a magnanimous spirit, a sense of integrity and justice, is helping to support the expansion of our life, okay? We also have Neptune here that is, squaring Jupiter, so we have to be able to separate fact from fiction. We have all of these Leo planets in aversion to all the Capricorn planets. So there's like a blind spot. They're not really aspecting each other anymore. See that? So we're really working within this Leo, Sagittarius, fire trine type of energy, which is of the nature of Jupiter. And then we're working within this square to Uranus. So we want to expand. We want to take action and move forward. This week, I don't know if the time is actually right yet to make all the leaps forward. This week is about the awareness of what needs to change. This is an awareness week. This is an illuminating week. The moon is not strong yet. Even when it makes its new moon conjunction, it's still weak. It may be telling you what the new cycle may be about, but it's not ready yet to really take all those actions. And the other reason I say that is because Jupiter's still retrograde, and it's going to be moving direct on the 11th of August. So my advice for you is pay attention. Don't ignore the things that are asking for change, but maybe wait until Mercury goes direct, which is this same day, Wednesday, the 31st. Okay. When Jupiter goes direct on the 11th, and then when the moon starts to get a little bit of strength after coming into the conjunction with the sun. All right. So let's talk about that new moon a little bit. It's happening in that first decan of Leo, which remember is the 5 of Wands, which is kind of a competitive aspect of vying for attention. It's about, are we able to step into the light and show who and what we are? And that there's so many planets in there right now. Like everybody's sitting at the table with the king. And sometimes that can be a good thing, and sometimes that can weaken these planets. All right. When the planets are too close to the sun dominates. Okay, the sun dominates these planets in the sky. They're all within 15 degrees and under the beams. None of them necessarily have dignity that is protecting them. So that's a problem. The moon, Venus, and Mars, every single planet of the night sect is pretty much having to submit to the authority of the king, the leader of the solar sect, of the diurnal sect, right? And that may lead to some tension. Now, what does that mean? I think this is a powerful moment for the diurnal sect, for unity, for bringing things together, because according to Robert Schmidt, the solar sect was some of the political I don't know, what is the word that I'm looking for? The word I'm looking for is raison d'etre, or it's kind of like underlying philosophical purpose or driving motivation for the diurnal sect is unification, selection, being special, and stability. It wants to create stability. And in this fixed fire sign of Leo, we want to stabilize our personal identities and who we are. And the night sect, being, of course, ruled by the moon, is associated with diversity, change, with creating a little bit of that instability, with multiplicity. And those planets that are associated with change and diversity are really weakened by being under the beams of the sun. So to me, this fixed energy, there's some stalemates that may be happening in your life, but I really want you to pay attention to where those stalemates are. Be okay with a little bit of immobileness right now, but say, I'm going to take note of where the tension is, and I'm going to be able to start moving forward again as some of these planets move direct, and as maybe some of the stellium type of energy, the fixed energy, starts to wane a little bit, where some of the planets that are in the night sect gain a little bit of power back, becoming out of the beams of the sun. Okay. All right. We may really see some autocratic power moves happening with all this Leo sun energy stuff. And I want you to be real careful of issuing dictates or commands, or issuing like ultimatums this week. This is not a great week for ultimatums. You may really injure yourself, and it may not work out the way that you are expecting with that square to Uranus. There may be a rebellion to your ultimatum that you didn't expect, that may be a violent revolution. So if you are somebody who is already pretty fiery and likes to issue commands, take a deep breath, recognize that there are other interests at play, not just your own. There's other perspectives that aren't necessarily just your perspective. Try to have a little compassion and empathy and see the other side of the coin. That'll help you through this week. Okay, so the new moon. New moon's going to happen at about 11:12 p.m. If you want to bump it up another day, or I'm sorry, minute, 11:11. Ooh, the universe saying yes, which I think is fun. So you could see the moon is going to be making a conjunction with Venus, and then it is going to be squaring Uranus right here at about 7 o'clock p.m. And then it becomes new around 11 o'clock. Okay. Now, I really like the way my teacher, Adam Ellenboss, speaks about new moons. I want us to start, my hope is that we start moving away from this need to associate every single new moon with our desire to manifest all the things that we want in life. That to me is capitalism speaking through astrology. That to me is we've been, that's the secret, right? And don't get me wrong, positive mindset and manifestation thinking is nice. And I think it is helpful. But I don't think that that's necessarily how new moons work. And you may disagree with me on this, and that's okay. We can still be friends. What I do think, and that I'm learning from Adam, and it makes a lot of sense to me, is these are triggering new karmic energies that are coming into your life. They are the moon is a trigger point. It is not necessarily just like, oh, you can make a wish to the universe and it's going to come into being. Manifestation does work where you do have to have an intention and then take an action, and sometimes it will come easy and sometimes it'll come into a brick wall. That's just sort of how it works. Not everything is meant to be manifested. I truly believe that. If you really make friends with Saturn, you'll start to recognize that you do have some limitations being a human being. Doesn't mean that you have to necessarily be oppressed by them, but coming to terms with them as you get older in your life, that can be healthy. Not recognizing your limitations can be a recipe for disaster. That being said, it is a powerful time for starting to recognize what the new cycle is about. I do think that the best way to do things new moon style is to really cultivate attention and awareness, because there are going to be new energetic impulses that arise in the events in your life and within you, because you are a manifestation of the universal energy. So there's going to be impulses in your desires, in your thought processes, in your awareness of what you do or don't want. And that's good. That's healthy. But pay attention to your life. If there is something that is asking to have attention over the new moon cycle, then you have to give attention to that. And here's the key. It may not be what you want. Does that make sense? I think I think the ascendant of the time that I'm recording this has clicked over into Capricorn. So this is the Saturnian part of the show. I started this with a Jupiter ascendant. I'm actually doing this on, what day is it? Today is Wednesday, July 24th. I'm doing it early because I'm going on vacation this weekend, or I'm going to visit some family, and I wanted to work in advance. And I started it in a Sagittarius ascendant, which was very hopeful and very expansive and things like that. And as it clicked over, I could feel it. It clicked over into Capricorn. We're talking about limitations, and we're talking about the constructive no. It's healthy though. This is all part of being a human being. It's all part of the human experience. There's going to be times for growth and there's going to be times for contraction. Coming to terms with that's going to be good. So with this new moon, come into awareness of the area of your chart and the new impulses that require your attention. I think that's really the key, is what new thing requires your energetic involvement. And it is probably going to be associated with both the Leo area of your chart and the Taurus area of your chart. There's going to be attention that is going to be needed with both of these things because of this square aspect. Also, there's going to be a connection with the Sagittarius ruled area of your chart. Okay, so these are the real energies that are being activated with this new moon. So take a look at that. If you need help, I'm here if you need to schedule a reading and you want to go over your chart and figure out exactly what this new moon has in store for you, reach out. We'll schedule something, because it's just about it's a longer term cycle. This is roughly a month-long cycle that we're going to be dealing with this new moon coming to fruition to the full moon and then waning again to the next new moon. Okay. All right. So that is Wednesday. The other thing that is happening is that Mercury, this is an important thing. This is what you've all been waiting for, because Mercury is very popular in pop culture, which it should be. It's an easy thing to track when it goes retrograde, because it's kind of so immediate. It is I think the swiftest moving planet that goes retrograde. So some of the things we're gonna see the manifestations of it a little bit more sooner than like retrograde Saturn, which is a lot slower. We may still be reevaluating things, but it's going to be in this longer term thing that it's not going to be as in our face. So as we move forward to the evening, you're going to see around 11:30 in the evening, okay, Mercury is going to turn direct, station direct. And as it stations direct, it is doing this interesting thing. Okay, let me flip my page of my notes here. As we move into Thursday morning, when Mercury moves direct, this is a very important point in the Mercury cycle. This is a condition of phasis, which is an appearance that speaks. So this is a very important point in the Mercury cycle where it is going about 15 degrees away from the sun. That sound familiar? This is the 15-degree arc of separation where Mercury escapes the beams, okay? So this is a very important time in the Mercury cycle. It's called the HELIACAL morning rise, okay? And this is important because this is where we can actually see Mercury in the sky, because it has escaped the arc that the sun blocks out with its rays. So in the wee early hours of the morning, let's say that the sun is over here in the early morning and Mercury is 15 degrees away, we're actually going to be able to see Stillborn. That's one of the names for Mercury. Or Hermes. We're going to be able to see Hermes in the sky. And that's important. In astrology, we want to trust our eyes too. This is something I learned from my good friend Gemini Brett. He's very experiential with his astrology, and he's like, hey, pay attention to what you're actually witnessing with your eyes. It's not just the chart. Go outside and look at what's happening in the sky, because those were omens that were speaking to the ancients and giving you signals about what is happening in your life and in the world and whatnot. So we have Hermes making his appearance as a morning star, okay? So there may be something related to the mercurial area of your life that is a revelation, where things come to light. It becomes visible. Whatever you've been working on behind the scenes now is coming to fruition. And there may be a peak moment on Thursday morning, somewhere around 9 a.m. or so, okay? After Mercury goes direct, where you're going to see the fruition of something. Pay attention to Thursday morning. It's a very important time, and really look at the Gemini and Virgo area of your chart and see if there's something that comes to light within those. Like I'm going to use my Leo rising chart again. It rules both the second house and the 11th house. So there may be something connected with the way that I use my resources or earn my income and the groups that I'm a part of. And there may be an experience of some sort of something coming to light and some sort of very important moment in regards to that. I know what that moment is, but I will wait until next week to tell you because Mercury is going behind the scenes. So I'll let it be a secret for now. But everybody's got something in the works right now, okay? Everybody's got something that they are working on behind the scenes that eventually might become more visible, okay? So pay attention to that Thursday morning. We're also going to be seeing a trine from the moon to retrograde Jupiter, okay? As the moon moves through Leo, we're going to see the hours starting to click forward, and that the moon is going to start gaining strength as it separates from the sun. It's gone through its rebirth. It's that new butterfly emerging from the chrysalis, and the wings are still wet. So when the moon is still within 15 degrees of the sun there, and really throughout the first 45-degree new moon cycle, we're still trying to get established with the new energy. We're still having to pay attention before we come to the point of manifestation, all right? And one of the things, the first thing we'll experience after that new moon is a trine with Jupiter. So that's a really nice energy. When we got, we're going to be triggering the greater benefic who's bringing the good stuff and the goodies into our life, usually the things that we like, okay? Now, you shouldn't get too comfy with that, because immediately after that, the moon is going to be conjoining Mars, and Mars has got this severing quality. So there might be a little bit of fiery energy as we move through, the trine and then the conjunction with Mars. Okay, now they are sect mates, so that's kind of cool. They are a political team that they agree with one another generally for the most part. Although I will say, Mars significations and moon significations, they're not necessarily the most harmonious. Mars wants to separate. Mars wants to cut. The moon wants to nurture. The moon wants to promote growth. The moon wants to bring things into being. Mercury, sometimes Mars will, bring things out of being, just like Saturn. Okay, it's associated with death and violence. The moon with maternal types of things. So there may be a conflict that comes up with that type of connection. That's actually called a kolesis, right? An adherence. Kolesis. KOLLESIS. And I'm using that correctly this time. See, we're gaining fluency. Even your friendly astrological forecaster here, who is obsessively studying these things, has more room for improvement using the fluency of these terms. Okay, and a kolesis is when you have something within 3 degrees of a conjunction, okay, or a co-presence, if you want to use the traditional nomenclature. So that's what was happening with the moon coming into kolesis with Mars. And that really is a true unification of those energies. So there may be some kind of gluing together of moon significations and Mars significations. All right, let's clear that. And at about midnight on Thursday, we have the moon escaping the bond. Now, if you remember, I spoke about the bond being just kind of like the under the beams with 15 degrees within the sun. So as we move through Thursday, and you see about midnight here, you can see that there is about 15 degrees of distance from the moon and the sun. And this is when the moon escapes this very weakened position of being under the thumb of the king, and the wings are starting to dry out a little bit. We're starting to have a general idea of what this moon cycle may be all about. So as we move into Friday, you may have a little bit more clarity about what you're doing moving forward. Okay, the other thing that we're experiencing on Friday is as we move into Friday, we're going to have a shifting of the moon sign into Virgo. There we go, right there. And the moon in Virgo has this really nice little thing going on here, which is called mutual reception. So this is, I'm going to say, well, MR there. And what that means is that Mercury, or Hermes, is traveling through the moon's residence, and the moon is traveling through Mercury's residence. So it's like they're buddies, and they are saying, hey, they're on the phone with one another. They have an open line of communication. They say, hey, where is everything in the fridge? Where is, what's the key code to the garage door? And there's this open line of communication and this partnership between them where they are helping to provide resources for the other. And this is a great time to get organized because Mercury is going to be gaining strength again because it's going direct. You may have already gone through all the revisions that you needed to go through with the retrograde cycle. And now you can start to kind of get down to business and, bring things into being. In the Virgo ruled area of your chart, you're going to get some really nice help with that. Being a Leo ascendant that I am, can you tell it's Leo season? We like to talk about ourselves in Leo season. Apologize for that if I'm doing that too much, but this is just an example. Virgo is the second house of my chart. So there may be something that maybe my financial life starts to move forward again, or is being supported by Mercury in Cancer. Okay, that mutual reception between the two of them, they're working together. If you're, okay, for example, in this chart, if you are a Virgo rising, you may be trying on a new type of personality or new type of something with your body that may be supported by the group that you're a part of, with Mercury being in the 11th house of groups and friendships, or being a part of, favor of the king. So maybe it's something where you have resources associated with an authority figure that are available to you to put on a new persona, or start a new exercise regime or something like that. Maybe you've joined a gym and you've got a group of people that you're working out with, like a yoga class or something like that. That's a good example of mutual reception between Mercury and the moon in the 11th and the first house. So all you Virgo risings, go join a yoga class or something this week. At the end of the week, it'll be supported. Anyway, we're going to see we're still in that new moon phase, which goes to about 45 degrees of arc of separation between the sun and the moon. And the moon is going to be gaining triplicity by night too. So it's going to have more support, community support in the evening. So maybe that yoga class is in the evening and you'll have community support from your friends. Okay. Or you're doing some kind of evening activity after the sun goes down that has got a lot of really good wind at its back. Okay, let's move forward. The Venus-Uranus aspect is going to perfect at 6 a.m. or so on Friday. So whatever you're experiencing with that tension between the Venus-ruled area of your chart and the Uranus-ruled, the area that Uranus is in your chart, is going to come to a head on Friday. And you're going to, we're going to start to see an alleviation of that energy after Friday. At 7:50 p.m., the only other aspect of the day is the moon in Virgo is making a trine with Uranus in Taurus. So this is like a really supportive aspect. This is where, if we've really paid attention to what needs to change, we can actually start implementing those changes towards Fridays. So all you need to do this week is be patient. Pay attention, be patient, and then the energy is going to start to really, alleviate, and you're going to feel really good about it, because if you really did the work of being present and you really paid attention to those things in your life that needed to shift, then you're going to be able to make a much better plan, and you're going to feel much more empowered to actually take the actions that are being supported by your life rather than fighting it. Okay. So that's Friday. As we move into Saturday, we have a number of aspects happening on Saturday. There's another cool thing that's happening Saturday that we'll talk about. Let me see if I can get my notes here. Okay, so let me clear my screen here again, and we'll finish this up because it's probably running long here. All right. Thank you for sticking with me. If you're still watching this, we have a lot going on, and we talked a lot about Uranus, so it's might be a little longer than normal. So here we go. Saturday, August 3rd, the moon's still going to be in Virgo. We're still going to have the mutual reception with Mercury in Cancer. We're still in the new moon phase, and we're going to see in the beginning of the day an adherence or a kalesis with with Venus and the Sun. So now Venus is going to be moving into that 3-degree range with the Sun. Okay. So they're going to start to bond together and blend some of their significations. You can see it right here around 3 o'clock. They're starting to be within that 3-degree range. And now Venus is taking her turn in the furnace, or sitting on the throne next to the king, or in the chair next to the king, and getting this, like, the favors of the king. And when Venus goes Cazimi on the 14th, it's not going to happen on this particular day. Okay, this is not, Venus moves kind of slow and it's chasing the Sun here. But on August 14th, Venus is going to get a Cazimi moment where it has a powerful connection with the Sun. And it's not necessarily the same kind of rebirth that Mercury went through, but it will be a rebirth of sorts. This is going to be the superior conjunction, where it is coming in direct motion in conjunction with the Sun. And it's kind of like a full moon phase of Venus, I think, where we're going to see where the last Cazimi moment happened at the inferior conjunction. Okay, and I don't have a date on that. If you want to look up the last time Venus was conjoined with the Sun when it was retrograde, I think that is the beginning of the Venus cycle that we're dealing with. I believe the last Venus retrograde we had was in Scorpio in Scorpio season last year. So I think that is correct. Don't hold me to that, but I'm pretty sure that is when the last inferior conjunction was in Scorpio. But take a look at that time frame and see what is coming to a head at this point now in the middle of August. Venus is moving quickly in the superior conjunction. There's a lot of speed that Venus has. It moves a little bit slower at the inferior one, but it's moving quickly now. The moon is going to be making a square with retrograde Jupiter at 8:30 a.m. or p.m. No. Yeah. Is it? Yeah. That's Friday. That's why I'm looking at Friday here. Yeah, about 8:30 a.m. Eastern, we're going to see the moon starting to make a square with Jupiter. So the new plan that you may be implementing there may be too many options, a myriad of options, and you're going to have to figure out how the details fit into the grander scheme of your plan. There may be a lot of details that you have to deal with, and it may feel a little bit overwhelming. But the beauty of that Virgo moon is that it's allowing you to parse out what stays and what goes. It's that energy of the harvest. So you may be harvesting, some of the energies of your life that need to come into being, and you can get rid of the things that don't work. If it doesn't fit into the grander scheme and into the greater vision, get rid of it. It may be just something that is a distraction. So that may be part of what we're doing on Saturday morning, is getting rid of some of the things that don't fit into the grander scheme, that aren't supported by this, beautiful mutual reception and things like that. As we move through the day, we're going to have a trine with Saturn, retrograde Saturn at 15 degrees. Okay. So some of the new structures may start to have Saturn's going to be assisting in that kind of getting rid of thing. Saturn loves to get rid of stuff, but there's this nice trine, this really supportive aspect. So, don't worry that what you're getting rid of is you're going to need it later. This is just really actually going to be opening up some really nice space, okay, for what needs to come in next. And then the moon's going to be moving into an opposition with Neptune in Pisces. So we may have to deal with the facts versus the fiction, the illusion versus the reality. And that may be some of the themes towards the end of the morning there, or towards the end of the afternoon, I'm sorry. And in the evening, we have a trine with retrograde Pluto at about 7:35 p.m. And that's the last aspect for the week, okay? So, no, it's not. Mercury loves to play tricks on me. This is the last, hopefully the last one that I'm going to be recording with Mercury retrograde. I've had all sorts of little snafus with these videos when Mercury has been retrograde. Last week, I had my webcam was on for the audio instead of this very nice broadcast microphone that I had. Before that, I had some really like lame brain fart about essential dignities and fall versus detriment. I doubled down on it during the thing, and here we are forgetting about Sunday. But I caught it. I didn't stop the video. So bear with me for one more day. As we move into Sunday, we are going to, the moon's going to be moving into Libra, and it's going to be starting kind of squaring all of this energy with Saturn in Capricorn, Pluto in Capricorn, and then retrograde Mercury in Cancer by sign base. It's not going to be perfecting necessarily, but we are going to see as we move forward into Sunday here, okay, in the wee hours. It's going to move into Libra at about 9:30 a.m. There we go. So now the moon is in Libra. All right. Now there's this tension between Mercury, Saturn, Pluto, and the moon. Remember, the moon in Libra, I think, likes to mediate between these energies. So it's going to be there may be some kind of resolution that you're still trying to come to, that, picking up the pieces of this like Mercury Pluto opposition that we were still dealing with. And you're going to have the support or the extra tension of maybe a relationship issue that is coming in. So you may have to compromise. This is a T square that is related, I think, to the energy of compromise. Very early in the day, there's going to be a sextile between the moon and Mercury, between that mutual reception thing when it's still in Virgo there. But then as we move into Sunday, we're going to start to feel this T square energy starting. My advice for Sunday is use your good social skills, use your good manners, use your good communication skills, and try to find a win-win situation. Libra is all about creating win-wins, I think. And try to find something that's fair, try to find something that's balanced, try to find balance, healthy balance between your public life and your private life. And that's going to be the theme for the next couple of days with the moon in Libra. Now, looking ahead into next week, if you've been with me here the whole time, we're going to be moving into the first quarter moon phase, which is a little bit of a tenseness with the square aspect. So we're going to see the sun, when it moves into Scorpio, having a square with the sun in Leo. So that'll be kind of a friction aspect where we may have a crisis that comes up that we need to deal with. Don't get scared about it. It's just giving you feedback, really. And then we have these beautiful trines with Venus and the sun with Jupiter. So that's going to be some really nice energy. And then Jupiter moves direct and Uranus moves retrograde. So we get one planet moving forward and one moving backwards. And don't be too freaked out about the outer planets moving backwards. They're really retrograde for almost half the year generally, or a great portion of the year. It just may be that the Taurus ruled area of your chart, you might be reevaluating some of the changes that you were moving forward with. So the cool thing is, I think that, the energy is a little bit lighter. There's always going to be challenges, but I think this is a less heavy energy than the Cancer Capricorn axis. And if we are really becoming aware, we've got all these planets in dignity, we become aware, take our time with the changes, pay attention to what gets revealed at this new moon that you want to initiate, or that the energy that wants to be initiated in your life. Then you will be able to take the actions that you need to take to manifest. That's really where the manifestation key comes in, is paying attention to what needs to be born within your life and responding. This is another thing with Leo. Leo energy is about the ability to take responsibility. It's about responsibility and being responsible for others. A good leader is responsible for others. And all responsibility is the ability to respond. And you want to be of service to the people in your life. And you're always going to be a better leader if you are thinking about how you can be of service to those folks. And that's what I'll leave you with today. Thank you, everybody, for your support. I appreciate your subscribing and being a part of this and watching and your attention. And I hope that you have a great week ahead. So take care, everyone. We'll see you later.